Hello, my name is Gilbert, and what I'm about to tell you will make your blood boil. My daughter's fiance, Chris, thought he could insult me with his VIP-only jab, and that's when I pulled the 100K I had funded for their wedding. But the worst part? The betrayal didn't stop there. What I did next shattered everything I had worked for. I stood up for myself, but was it too late? My family, my future, destroyed in one night. Can you imagine losing everything because of one decision? The sun was just beginning to dip behind the rows of houses in the suburban neighborhood. The street was quiet, save for the occasional chirp of birds settling down for the night. I sat on the worn-out armchair by the window, watching the last few golden rays spill across the yard. Dinner was still an hour away, but I wasn't hungry. My mind was elsewhere, stuck in a loop of frustration I couldn't shake. I glanced at the phone on the coffee table. My daughter's wedding was supposed to be the highlight of our family's year, but something felt off. It wasn't the grandiosity of it. It wasn't even the expense. It was the way I had been pushed to the sidelines. As I thought about the plans, her dress, the venue, the guest list, I felt more like an outsider than the father of the bride. Everything's fine, I told myself, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. I had watched her grow up, seen her go from a little girl to a woman, but in the last few years, I had been forgotten. Not in the big, glaring way that would have been obvious, but in all the little ways that added up. Distant conversations, forgotten birthdays, the constant reference to her fiancé's family while mine was rarely mentioned. I wanted to feel excited about her wedding, proud even, but I was angry. No one acknowledged the sacrifices I had made to get us here. They saw me as a paycheck, a silent provider, and I had let it happen. Dinner plans were still in the air when the fiancé, Steve, casually remarked, "I think we should only invite the important people. You know, the ones who matter to the wedding." It hit me like a punch to the gut, and I couldn't hide it. There was no doubt in my mind who important was, and it wasn't me. That was the moment, the spark that made me realize just how much I had been sidelined. My contribution, both financial and emotional, had never really mattered to them, not truly. I had spent years trying to be the good father, the good husband, the silent pillar that held everything together. But I was tired, so tired of being invisible. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. How could I have let them treat me like this? For years, I had put up with it, brushing off the little dismissals, the casual insults, the moments when they needed me but never took the time to appreciate me. And for what? To be brushed aside when it truly mattered. I started thinking back to all those dinners, the ones where I would speak up about something, only to be interrupted or ignored. Those times when I would offer advice, only for it to be dismissed as if I didn't have the right to contribute. I had spent my life biting my tongue, never wanting to rock the boat, always thinking that peace at the dinner table was more important than my voice being heard. But what had that gotten me? A seat at the table, sure, but nothing more. One particular night flashed in my mind. We had been at a family dinner at the house maybe 5 years ago now. I had said something simple about how I thought the house should be better maintained, and Steve had laughed it off. "You're just the old man who complains about everything," he'd said, shrugging it off like it was nothing. And everyone else had laughed. The sting had stayed with me for days, but I let it go. Until now. As I sat there, in the dim light of the living room, my anger bubbling up, I realized something. I was done. Done with being the quiet one. Done with being dismissed. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about every moment where I had been ignored, every little slight that piled up until it was too much to bear. I couldn't keep pretending I didn't care, that I didn't matter. I stood up, walking slowly over to the desk where I had my phone. My hands were steady as I pulled up the bank app. I was still going to help with the wedding, just not in the way they expected. I opened the transaction screen and withdrew the $100,000 I had promised for the wedding. The decision felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders, but at the same time, it felt like an end. There was no going back from this. I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I wasn't just the father who sat quietly in the background. This was my statement. As I set the phone down, my mind raced. What would they say? Would they understand? It didn't matter. I wasn't just giving up on the wedding, though. I was giving up on being the silent father who let things slide. I had been the good guy for too long. Now, it was time to be someone else, someone who took control. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. The act felt small, almost insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it wasn't. It was everything. It was the first real act of defiance I had ever given myself permission to make. The house felt eerily still the next morning. The quiet hum of the refrigerator was the loudest sound in the room. I had barely slept, my mind still racing with the weight of yesterday's decision. With the phone resting on the counter and the funds withdrawn, the reality of what I'd done slowly began to settle in. A decision had been made, one that could unravel everything. Sitting at the kitchen table, I sipped my coffee slowly, my hands trembling slightly. I stared out the window, watching the early morning light dance across the lawn. I knew I had crossed a line, that $100,000 wasn't just money, it was power, and I had taken it away from them. The moment I had hit send on the bank transfer, I knew things would never be the same. I couldn't shake the words Steve had said the night before. VIP only. The thought stung like a fresh wound, and I found myself replaying those words over and over in my head. It was as if he had slapped me in the face and expected me to stay quiet. My own daughter was marrying a man who couldn't even bother to respect me, but I had respected them for far too long, and this was the breaking point. There was no turning back now. The phone buzzed on the table, and I glanced at it. Kate's name flashed on the screen, and my stomach churned. I picked it up, taking a deep breath before answering. "Dad, what's going on with the money?" Her voice was cold, tinged with confusion. She didn't understand. I withdrew it, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can't keep doing this, Kate." There was a long pause, and I could feel the tension thickening in the air, even through the phone. I could hear her breathing on the other end, her disbelief palpable. "What do you mean you can't keep doing this? This is my wedding, Dad. We've been planning this for months. It's not about you." "Exactly," I replied, my voice quieter but firm. "It's not about me, is it? It hasn't been for a long time." The silence on the other end was almost deafening. I could hear her trying to process what I was saying, the reality of it sinking in. "I don't get it, Dad," she finally said, her voice cracking just a little. "You've always been there. Always. Now, you're just going to pull out like this?" I sighed, feeling a sharp pang in my chest. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I wasn't trying to hurt her, but I was tired. "You don't see it, do you? I've always been here, always been the one in the background, but now I can't keep doing this. I'm not just a wallet for your wedding, Kate. I'm your father. Please don't do this," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "This is about my future. It's not about you. It's not about the money." I swallowed hard, fighting the lump in my throat. "You don't get it. It's about respect. You and Steve, you've both been treating me like I don't matter. Like I'm invisible. But I'm done with that." There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought she might say something else, but instead I heard her sob softly into the phone. My chest tightened. I wanted to comfort her, but I couldn't. Not now. Not when she still didn't understand. Before I could say anything else, the line went dead. She hung up. I sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand. I knew this was just the beginning. There was more to come, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. The silence in the house felt even heavier now, pressing down on me. I wasn't sure if I had done the right thing, but I knew I couldn't go back. Minutes later, the phone rang again. I didn't need to check the screen to know who it was. Steve. I let it ring a couple of times before answering. "Gilbert," Steve's voice came through with a clipped tone. "I'm sure you've already realized that what you did was a mistake. You've had your say, but this is Kate's life. She's not going to appreciate being forced into a situation like this." I clenched my fists, feeling my anger rise. "This isn't about you, Steve. This is about me, and how I've been treated for years. You think I haven't noticed how I've been pushed aside?" "Gilbert, you're being unreasonable," Steve continued, dismissing my concerns with the same arrogance he always had. "This is about Kate's future. It's not personal. She'll understand." I couldn't hold back anymore. "You don't get it, do you? It's always been about you, hasn't it? About your plans, your wedding. But where was I? Where was I when I needed to be seen? No, Steve, this is personal. This is me taking control." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then finally, Steve spoke, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're making a big mistake, Gilbert. But you'll regret it when she's gone. I promise you that." The call ended abruptly, leaving me in a cloud of frustration. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the same man who had let all of this slide for years. I was done. Word of my withdrawal quickly spread through the family. Some didn't understand, some were angry, but I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of satisfaction. My decision had shaken things up. I wasn't invisible anymore. Later that day, as I sat alone in my living room, I stared at an old family photo on the wall. It was from years ago, back when we were still close, when we still laughed together. It felt like another lifetime. A sense of loss washed over me, but beneath it, there was a glimmer of something else, something stronger, a feeling that I wasn't done yet, that I still had the power to shape things, even if it meant losing everything else. The phone buzzed on the table again, this time from an unexpected number. I picked it up, and a familiar voice greeted me. "Uncle Gilbert, it's Sam." My heart softened. Sam had always been like a son to me, and I had always been there for him. His words caught me off guard. "I heard what happened," he said quietly, "and I just wanted you to know that I've got your back. I think you're doing the right thing." For a brief moment, I felt a sense of relief, a small flicker of hope in the midst of all the chaos. But I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. As I hung up the phone, I knew this was only the beginning. There was no going back now. The house felt suffocating. The silence was loud, almost oppressive, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. It had been 3 days since I pulled that 100K, and every moment since had only solidified the growing isolation around me. I could feel it in the air, even as my daughter, Kate, and the rest of the family tiptoed around me, trying to act like everything was fine, but nothing was fine. Not anymore. I sat in the dimly lit living room, flipping through old family photos, trying to find a time when things were different, when we were still close, when my opinions still mattered. Each photo felt like a distant memory, one that was slipping further away with every passing hour. I was starting to wonder if it was all just an illusion, this idea that we had been a family, or maybe it was just me, clinging to something that was long gone. I stopped on a photo of Kate and me. She was younger then, full of life, and there was a time when she looked at me like I mattered. But now, all I saw in her eyes was confusion and disappointment. I had tried for years to be the good father, the one who quietly supported, never asked for anything in return. But somewhere along the way, I'd become invisible to them. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. I had made my choice. I wasn't going to back down. But still, doubts gnawed at me. What was I really doing? Was this the right decision? My phone buzzed on the table, dragging me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, an unknown number. I picked it up. "Gilbert?" a voice said on the other end. "It's Tim." Tim was my cousin. We hadn't spoken much over the years, but there had always been a bond. He'd always been a quiet observer, much like me. I hadn't expected him to reach out, not after the family had turned their backs on me. But there was something in his voice that made me pause. "I heard about what you did with the money," Tim continued. "I just wanted you to know. I understand. You're not alone in this." I didn't know how to respond. My throat tightened and I felt a wave of relief flood over me. For the first time in days, I didn't feel completely alone. "Thanks, Tim," I said quietly. "I appreciate it." "I know it's tough," he said, his tone filled with empathy. "But I've always respected you. You've got a lot more strength than people realize. Just don't lose sight of what matters." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. His words were like a breath of fresh air in a room that had grown stale. Maybe I hadn't lost everything. Maybe there was still hope. The next morning, I made my way to a quiet cafe in town. I needed to talk to Marcus, Kate's fiancé. This had gone on long enough. It was time to confront him. I had tried to let things go, but that VIP-only comment had been the last straw. It had torn through me like a knife, and I couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. I needed answers. When I walked into the cafe, I spotted him right away. Marcus was sitting by the window, his back straight, his posture that of a man who thought the world owed him something. I didn't waste any time. I walked straight up to his table and sat down across from him. "I need to talk to you," I said, my voice low but firm. Marcus raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a smirk. "About what?" he asked, already dismissing me with his tone. "You know what?" I replied, trying to keep my anger in check. "That comment you made about the VIP-only guests? That was disrespectful, and it's hurt me a lot. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his arms crossing over his chest as if I were the one who needed to explain myself. It's just a wedding, Gilbert. It's not personal. No, I said, my voice rising slightly. It is personal. This is about me, and the fact that you've completely disregarded my place in this family. You've been disrespecting me for months. He shrugged, unbothered. Look, I'm just trying to help Kate with her big day. You wouldn't understand. I gripped the edge of the table, fighting the urge to lash out. His arrogance was overwhelming, and it made me feel smaller than I had in years, but I couldn't let him see how much he was getting under my skin. I understand perfectly, I said through gritted teeth, and I don't appreciate being dismissed. Not anymore. Marcus chuckled softly, as if this whole thing were a game. Gilbert, you're overreacting. Just let Kate and I handle things, all right? His dismissive attitude snapped something inside me. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. You listen to me, Marcus. I've been quiet for too long. But I'm done. I'm done being the nice guy. I'm done being the father who gets pushed aside. If you want to keep treating me like I don't matter, then fine. But don't expect me to keep giving you everything I've worked for. I turned on my heel and walked out of the cafe, my heart pounding in my chest. As I stepped into the cool air, a new feeling washed over me. It was anger, yes, but it was also something else. Something that felt like power. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't the one being ignored. I had spoken my mind and it felt damn good. Back at home, I sat down at the kitchen table, my hands shaking. I knew I had to do something big, something that would make them all pay attention. I couldn't just sit back anymore. I picked up the pen and started writing the letter to Kate. I couldn't let this go on any longer. It hurt, but this was the only way to make her understand. The only way to make her see me. As I finished the letter, I hesitated. This was it. This was the point of no return. I could feel the weight of the decision on my shoulders, but I knew I had to do it. I picked up the phone, dialed my lawyer's number, and waited. When he picked up, I told him about the situation. He was quiet for a moment, then spoke with a hint of excitement in his voice. There's a way, he said. We can challenge Marcus. We can take control of this. The thought of it filled me with a mixture of dread and anticipation. I wasn't just going to sit back anymore. This was my family, and I would fight for it. But I knew I was crossing a line, and I wasn't sure I could go back. I walked outside, the letter in my hand. The sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the yard. I stood in front of the mailbox, my heart racing. This was it. The moment that would change everything. I took one last look at the letter before dropping it in the mailbox. No turning back now. The morning sun was low, casting long shadows across the kitchen. The silence in the house felt heavier today, more suffocating. I had sent the letter to Kate the night before. And now, all I could do was wait. It was as if time itself had slowed, each minute stretching out in front of me like a never-ending line. I sat by the window, watching the mailbox, hoping for some sign, any sign, that my daughter would respond. But nothing came. The waiting felt like a weight on my chest, suffocating me, tightening with every second that passed. I picked up my coffee and took a long sip, my eyes never leaving the mailbox. I could feel the anxiety rising within me, but there was also a strange sense of relief. I had done what I needed to do. It was out of my hands now. Yet I still couldn't shake the fear that I had pushed my daughter away forever. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen, and there it was. A message from Kate. The words were cold, distant. I got your letter. We need to talk. Later. That was it. No apology. No acknowledgement of what I had done. Just a cryptic reply that left me more confused than before. What was she thinking? What did this mean? I stared at the message for a long moment, the words blurring together. I felt a pit form in my stomach. Had I miscalculated? Was this the end of it all? I couldn't tell. Just then the phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Kate. It was Marcus. Gilbert, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. I've been thinking about your little stunt with the money. I clenched my fist, the anger bubbling up inside me. And what exactly are you thinking, Marcus? His tone was dismissive, as though I was nothing more than a nuisance. Look, it's just a wedding, all right? I don't know why you're making such a big deal about this. You really think pulling the money is going to make a difference? It's not. I gritted my teeth, trying to keep my cool. He had no idea. He didn't understand what this had cost me, what it had cost our family. You think you can just throw your weight around because you're paying for everything, but that's not how this works. Kate and I are building our future. What you do or don't do won't change that, he said, his voice filled with smug assurance. I felt a wave of frustration hit me. You don't get it, Marcus. It's not about the money. It's about respect. You've been treating me like I don't matter. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him laughing to himself. Respect? You're just mad because things aren't going your way. Maybe it's time you accepted that this is how it is now. His words stung. They were calculated, cold, and designed to put me in my place. But I wasn't going to back down. Not this time. Before I could respond, he added, Kate might have already made her decision. And frankly, it's not in your favor. You're not the one in charge here, Gilbert. I felt the air leave my lungs. His words hit harder than I expected. Was he threatening me? Was Kate really siding with him over me? The line went dead, and I stood there for a long moment, staring at the phone in my hand. Everything I had worked for, everything I had done for Kate seemed to be slipping away. Was I really losing her? Was I losing everything? Later that evening, the family dinner arrived, and I had no choice but to attend. I wasn't looking forward to it. The tension was already palpable. It wasn't just the absence of my son-in-law's respect. It was Kate's silence. The dinner table was set, but it felt more like a battlefield. Marcus sat across from me, his smug grin still plastered on his face, and I could feel the weight of his presence in the room. There was a moment of silence as I tried to speak to Kate. She barely looked at me. The hurt in her eyes was more than I could bear. She seemed distant, as if something had changed. She was no longer the daughter I knew. Kate, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady, though it trembled with the force of my emotions. She didn't respond right away. She just pushed her food around on her plate, avoiding my gaze. I know you're upset with me, but this isn't just about the wedding. This is about everything that's been happening, about how I've been treated all these years. She still didn't say anything. The silence felt heavy. The other family members glanced at each other, uncomfortable with the tension building between us. Finally, she looked up, her eyes filled with resignation. Maybe you were right, but I can't undo the decision I've made. Her words hit me like a punch in the gut. I couldn't believe it. After everything I had done for her, for this family, this was what I got in return. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I felt my anger rising, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything more. What was the point? She had already made her choice, and I was no longer a part of it. That night, as I sat alone in my study, the weight of it all began to settle in. I had tried for so long to keep the peace, to avoid confrontation, but now it was clear that my patience had run out. I picked up a pen and started writing. A letter, but this time to myself. I needed to remind myself of why I was doing this, why I was standing up. I wasn't just some background character in my own life. I deserved more than that. As I wrote, I felt a sense of purpose. But just before I sealed the letter, my phone buzzed again. It was an email from my lawyer. I opened it quickly, my heart racing. The message was short but to the point. There's a potential legal angle here that could turn this around. We can challenge Marcus's control over the situation. I sat back in my chair staring at the screen. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. This could be the turning point, but it was risky, very risky. I knew that. I paused, staring at the email in disbelief. This could be the game changer I was waiting for. Or it could destroy everything I thought I knew. The day was still young, but the weight of the decision I had made hung heavy over me. I sat at my desk in the study, the screen of my computer casting a faint glow in the dim room. The email from my lawyer was still open, the words staring back at me. It gave me an upper hand, a chance to take control. But at what cost? This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about my place in this family, about my dignity. I stared at the message, my mind racing. The consequences were clear. If I moved forward with this, there would be no going back. The rift with Kate would only deepen. But could I live with myself knowing I had done nothing? I knew I had to act. I couldn't stay passive, letting things spiral. But the guilt weighed heavily on me. The thought of losing Kate, of losing my daughter forever, gnawed at me. But I couldn't sit idly by and let her marriage become another example of how I'd been silenced, how I'd been overlooked. Suddenly, the sound of my phone ringing broke my thoughts. I picked it up, not recognizing the number. My stomach tightened. I could only think of one person who would be calling me right now. "Dad, we need to talk." Kate's voice came through, strained and distant. "Can we meet?" The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I wasn't prepared for this. I hadn't expected her to reach out, but there it was. She wanted to meet. "Of course," I replied, my voice quieter than I'd intended. "Where and when?" "A cafe, in an hour." I hung up and sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or terrified. This was it. The moment where everything could change, or crumble. The cafe was busy when I arrived, the quiet buzz of conversation filling the air. I spotted Kate at a corner table, her back to the wall, her posture rigid. She didn't look up as I approached, and I pulled out the chair across from her, sitting down slowly. The silence between us was thick. Kate's eyes were fixed on her coffee, her fingers tapping absent-mindedly on the cup. The distance between us felt like an ocean, and no matter how much I wanted to reach across it, I couldn't. I cleared my throat. "Kate, She cut me off before I could get another word out. "I got your letter." Her voice was colder than I expected. I nodded slowly, trying to gauge her mood. "And?" I asked, my heart racing in my chest. She looked up finally, but it wasn't the look I wanted. "I don't get it, Dad. I just don't." She shook her head, her eyes growing distant. "Why make this about you? It's my wedding. My life." The words hit harder than I thought they would. I wanted to reach out, to explain everything, but she wasn't listening. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I fought to keep my voice steady. "You don't understand. It's not just about the money. It's about respect, Kate. You've pushed me aside for years, and I've taken it. But I can't do it anymore." She leaned back in her chair, a small sigh escaping her lips. "I didn't ask for all this. You've always been there for the money, but not for me. Do you even hear what you're saying?" Before I could respond, her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen. The distraction was enough to break my focus. She was already pulling away from me again, her attention elsewhere. Then, in a flat tone, she said, "I'm moving forward with the wedding, with or without you." Those words hit me harder than anything else she had said. It felt like a final blow, a clean break. I didn't know what to say. I was stunned. For the first time, I felt completely invisible to her. The weight of everything, the years of trying, of hoping, came crashing down on me. This was the end of something, maybe the end of everything. I didn't have the words to respond. What could I say? She was right. She had made up her mind. I stood up, pushing my chair back with a sharp screech. I had nothing left to say. "You've made your choice," I said, my voice tight. "But I hope one day you'll understand what this is all about." Kate didn't move, didn't say anything else. She just stared at her phone, lost in whatever was on the screen. As I walked out of the cafe, the weight of the world seemed to press down on me. My daughter, the one person I thought I could count on, had just closed the door. I was left standing outside, alone. That night I couldn't sleep. The argument with Kate replayed over and over in my mind. The things she had said, the way she had dismissed me, had burned into my mind. But I couldn't back down. I knew I had to make a choice. For too long, I had allowed myself to be the quiet observer. Not anymore. In the quiet of my study, I sat down, staring at the blank piece of paper in front of me. I had to write to her. It wasn't just a letter. It was the final act. A chance to set things straight. I picked up the pen and started writing. Words poured out, raw and unfiltered. I told her how much I loved her, how much I had given up, and how much I had sacrificed. But I also told her that I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for her, no matter how much it hurt. I sealed the letter and paused. For a moment, I hesitated. Should I send it? Would it change anything? Just then, my phone buzzed. Another call. This time it was my lawyer. I answered quickly, the urgency in his voice making my heart race. "Gilbert, I've just received some new information. There's a legal angle here we can explore. It could change everything. My hand froze as I stared at the phone. The letter I had written, the decisions I had made, all of it might be changing now. I stared at the phone in disbelief. This was more than just a battle with my daughter. This was about something much bigger, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. I took a deep breath and picked up the pen again. The fight wasn't over. It had just begun. I stood in the living room, staring at the letter I had just finished writing. It was a long time coming, and now, finally, I had said everything I needed to say. The weight of the decision I had made settled into my bones. This was it. There would be no turning back. I had waited long enough, let things slide for too many years, and now the silence between Kate and me had reached a breaking point. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a man who had been pushed to the edge. The letter was everything I had ever wanted to say to her. It wasn't just about the money, though that was part of it. It was about the years I'd spent making sacrifices, the years of silence, the feeling of being nothing more than a financial backup in the background of my own daughter's life. I had poured everything into this family, and this is what I had received in return. I could feel my hands trembling as I held the letter in front of me, the ink still fresh. I wanted to send it right then, but something held me back. I hesitated, wondering if I had waited too long. Was it too late to fix things? Was there any way to make up for the hurt I had caused? I shook my head and stared at the envelope. There was no fixing it, no more second chances. I had to do this. I took a deep breath, feeling the finality of it all. Just as I reached for my coat to leave for the post office, my phone buzzed and I picked it up, seeing Kate's name on the screen. My heart skipped a beat. What could she want now? Was she calling to apologize? "Hi, Dad." Her voice sounded cautious. "Can we meet? I need to talk to you." A knot tightened in my stomach. She hadn't asked to meet me in person since the last blow-up. I braced myself for what was to come. "Where?" "The cafe near the park. Can you meet me there?" "I'll be there," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I set the letter down, took a quick glance at the clock, and grabbed my keys. As I made my way out the door, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of conversation awaited me. Was she going to confront me about the letter, or was she finally ready to hear what I had to say? The cafe was quiet when I arrived. I spotted Kate sitting in a corner, her back to me, her posture tense. I walked over and sat across from her, trying to read her expression. She didn't look up immediately, and for a moment neither of us said anything. The silence between us felt like an ocean, and I had no idea how to bridge the gap. "Kate," I said, trying to start things off. She cut me off. "I got your letter," she said flatly, still avoiding eye contact. "I don't understand why you'd do this, Dad. You've always been the one to help, to support, but now you're trying to ruin everything. What happened?" Her words hit me harder than I expected. She wasn't angry, not like I thought she'd be. She sounded more confused, almost hurt. "I didn't want to ruin anything," I replied, my voice softening. "But you've shut me out. You've always shut me out. And I can't just stand by anymore while you make decisions without considering the impact on the people who love you." Kate looked up then, her eyes colder than I'd seen them in a long time. "Dad, this isn't about you. This is my wedding, my life. I'm doing what's best for me." I could feel my blood pressure rise. I had always supported her. I had given her everything, and yet here she was treating me like an afterthought. It wasn't just about the money, it was about respect. "Do you think this is easy for me, to sit back and watch while you make choices that hurt not only me but everyone around you? Do you even care?" My words came out sharper than I intended. "Stop acting like you've been a saint in all this," she snapped back. "You've never trusted me. You've always made me feel like I'm not good enough." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. "It's not about trust, it's about love. I've done everything I could to protect you, to give you a chance, but you don't see it. You don't even see me anymore." The conversation spiraled. She was digging in her heels, and so was I. We were both too stubborn to back down. Just when I thought we might finally have a breakthrough, her phone buzzed and she glanced at the screen. Without hesitation, she checked the message, further proving that I was nothing more than an inconvenience to her. Finally, she put the phone down and said something that tore me apart. "I'm going through with the wedding, with or without you." The words echoed in my mind, and I was left speechless. The finality of them hit me hard. She was done. No more second chances, no more room for negotiation. I stood up, my heart heavy with disappointment. "You've made your decision," I said quietly. "But know this, Kate, I did this because I love you. Even if you can't see it now." She didn't say anything else. She just stood up and walked away, leaving me standing there alone. The evening came, and I couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that had settled in my chest. I sat in my study, the letter still sitting in front of me. The conversation with Kate had drained me, but it also ignited something deep inside me. I couldn't just let this go. I had spent too many years trying to make things work. I had to take control. I took out another sheet of paper, the letter to Kate, now a distant thought. I wrote to myself, a letter about my future, about my dignity, and about what I was willing to do to fix this. It wasn't about her wedding anymore. It was about me. Just as I finished writing, my phone buzzed again. Another call from my lawyer. I answered quickly, my heart racing. "Gilbert," the lawyer said, his voice urgent. "I have new information about the financial dispute. There's a way to change things, but it's going to have consequences, big consequences." My pulse quickened. This was it. Everything had changed in an instant. My next move would determine everything. I paused for a moment, staring at the phone. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This was about something much bigger. I sat in the dim light of my study. The only sound in the room was the ticking of the clock. The letter from Kate still sat on my desk, unopened. The weight of it seemed to crush me, and I couldn't stop staring at it. I had said everything in that letter, every painful truth, every bit of frustration that had built up over the years. And yet, here I was, still unsure of whether it was the right thing to do. I'd always thought that the hardest thing I'd ever do would be to confront her, but this felt different. The act of writing those words had been cathartic, but sending them? That was the point of no return. My mind raced with the consequences of everything I'd just done. I'd given her everything, my time, my money, my life, and she still didn't understand. The emotional distance between us had grown so wide that I wasn't sure we'd ever find our way back. Not just financially, but emotionally. I had nothing left. The letter was everything that was broken in us. I picked it up again, hesitating as I ran my fingers over the paper. Would she even read it? Would it matter? I wanted to make things right. I had to. But deep down I knew the truth. There was a good chance it was too late. Suddenly I stood up, a burst of clarity filling my chest. No more running away. I had to face this head on. I had to speak to her one last time. Not for me, but for her. Maybe I could salvage something. Maybe I could remind her of who I was. The father who'd been there, not just with the money, but with the love. I grabbed the letter, stuffed it into an envelope, and stood at the door for a moment. The decision had been made. I just hoped it wasn't too late. The next morning, the sun was barely up when there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Chris, Kate's fiancé, standing there, his face tight with anger. "I need to talk to you," he said, pushing his way past me before I had a chance to respond. "Chris, this isn't the time for—" "Oh, it's time, all right," he snapped. "You've gone too far, Gilbert. Trying to mess with the wedding, pulling that money, you're trying to ruin everything." His words stung. Every one of them felt like a slap in the face. I hadn't asked for this. All I'd done was try to be a part of Kate's life, to be there for her, but now I was the villain. "Ruining everything?" I echoed, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "I'm trying to protect my daughter from a man I don't trust." Chris stepped forward, getting right in my face. "You don't get to control her anymore. You never did. You've been nothing but a financial backer, and now you want to act like you have a say in her life. You don't know anything about the years I've spent building this family, Chris. You think this is about the money?" I shook my head. "It's about trust, and you've never earned mine." Chris's jaw tightened, and I saw the anger flare in his eyes. "You think you're the only one with a stake in this? You don't even see what you're doing to her. You're not just hurting her, you're hurting us all. And I'm warning you now. If you don't back off, you'll regret it." He turned to leave, but I wasn't done. I had one final card to play. "Don't threaten me," I said, my voice low and steady. "I've already pulled the money. If that's what it takes to make you understand, then so be it." Chris froze for a second, then turned back with an icy stare. "You're really going to do this, aren't you? You're going to ruin everything just to prove a point." He stormed off without saying another word, leaving me standing there, my heart racing. As I watched him leave, a chill settled in my chest. The situation had spiraled so far out of my control that I wasn't sure there was any way back. But it had to be done. I had made my choice, and there was no going back now. That afternoon, I sat alone in my study again, the silence deafening. My phone rang, and when I saw Kate's name, I felt my heart sink. I took a deep breath and answered, "Dad, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Her voice was shaky, but there was an edge of anger in it. "Why are you trying to ruin everything?" I closed my eyes, the pain in her voice cutting deeper than anything Chris had said. "I'm not trying to ruin anything. I'm trying to protect you. This isn't just about the money, Kate. It's about you, about what's happening to us." "You're playing games, Dad. I don't get it," she snapped. "I've told you 1,000 times I'm doing this my way. You've never trusted me to make my own decisions, and now this... I felt the tears threaten to rise. "I'm not playing games, Kate. I'm just trying to show you how much I care. You don't get it. I've been there for you always, but now it feels like I've lost you. I can't sit by and let this happen." There was a long silence on the other end. "You've always been critical of my choices," she said softly. "You never really trusted me, especially with Chris. But I love him, Dad, and you can't see it." "I just want you to be happy," I replied, my voice breaking. "But this is tearing us apart." Kate didn't say anything for a moment, and when she did, it was with finality in her voice. "I'm going through with the wedding, with or without you." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My own daughter, my flesh and blood, had just cut me out completely. "Kate, please don't," I started, but she hung up before I could finish. I sat there for a long time, the phone still pressed to my ear. The silence in the room was deafening, and I felt like I was losing everything. I was losing her. I put the phone down slowly, the weight of her words still lingering in the air. The tension between us had snapped, and there was no going back. The weight of everything pressed down on me like a ton of bricks. I sat there in my office, alone, early morning light streaming in through the window, casting long shadows across the desk. The letter from Kate had been sitting there for days. I hadn't had the courage to open it. Now, I didn't have the choice. This was the moment that had been coming for years, and it had arrived at last. I reached for the letter, holding it in my hands for a moment longer than I should have. The anger I had felt over the past few days, over the years, really, had started to fade, replaced with something else, something colder, something resolute. I had been passive for too long, letting everyone else dictate my life, letting Kate, Chris, and even the situation make decisions for me. Not anymore. I wasn't going to be the quiet father who just stood by and let his family walk all over him. I pulled an old photograph from the drawer beside me, a picture of Kate when she was just a little girl, beaming in a red dress. Her innocence and the hope I had for her future were there in that moment. But things had changed. Somewhere along the way, we had drifted apart. I didn't know how, but I was no longer sure who my daughter was. I had to do this, though. I had to face her. One last time. Not just as her father, but as a man with a voice. I made my decision. I would go to the wedding, but not like this. Not as the passive father who was just expected to show up and keep quiet. I was going to do it on my terms. I stood up, my hands shaking just a little, and walked to the door. No turning back now. That afternoon, I found myself sitting across from Kate and Chris in the living room. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel every inch of it in my bones. Kate's eyes were red, her face strained with a mixture of hurt and anger. Chris, as usual, was defensive. It felt like we were all walking on eggshells, but I wasn't going to be the one to back down this time. "What's this all about, Dad?" Kate's voice trembled. "I don't understand. Why are you doing this?" I took a deep breath. "I'm doing this because I love you," I said. "Because I've spent my whole life supporting you, but now I see that you've allowed yourself to be manipulated. I've watched it happen, and I can't stand by any longer." Chris sneered. "You don't get it, do you? You're tearing this family apart, all because you don't want me to marry her." "I'm not the one tearing anything apart," I shot back, my voice steady, despite the anger bubbling inside me. "I'm the one trying to protect my daughter from a man who doesn't have her best interests at heart." "Dad, please," Kate interjected, her voice cracking. "Why are you doing this now? After everything. I looked at her, searching her eyes for the little girl in that photo, but all I saw was a woman I didn't recognize. Because I've been watching you make decisions that I don't agree with. I've been watching you throw away the life we built together, and I can't pretend it doesn't hurt anymore. Chris leaned forward, crossing his arms. So what's your big plan? You want to control us forever? We're done with your money, Gilbert. We don't need it. I leaned back, trying to calm myself before the words came out too harshly. Fine, I said. If you want to go through with this wedding without me, without my money, then do it. But you'll have to do it on your own. The room fell into an unbearable silence. Kate's eyes welled up with tears, and I could see the confusion in her face. She didn't know what to do with my words, and maybe that was what hurt the most. I'm doing this because I want you to think for yourself, Kate. You deserve better than what's happening. And I'm not going to be a part of it, not unless you can look at me and see your father, not just someone who signs checks for you. I'm leaving, Kate said, her voice barely above a whisper, before standing up. She turned, walking out of the room with Chris right behind her. I sat there, the weight of my decision sinking in. Maybe I had gone too far. Maybe I had pushed her away in a way I couldn't undo. But I couldn't sit back any longer. I couldn't be that weak man anymore. Later that evening, as I was sitting in the kitchen, staring at the remnants of the dinner I had prepared just hours before, the silence was broken by a small envelope on the counter, Kate's handwriting. I swallowed hard and opened it. I'm sorry for everything, Dad. I've been hurt by your actions, and I can't believe you don't see how much this has hurt me. But I know you've done all this because you care about me. I don't know what to do right now. I need time. I love you. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. She loved me, but I didn't know where we stood anymore. I sat there staring at the letter, the weight of everything sinking in. This was the moment I had feared, the moment when everything changed. My heart ached with the realization that I might have just lost my daughter. The grand hall was full of guests, but all I could focus on was the tension between us. The wedding was in full swing, but it felt like a distant event, something I was watching through a haze. Kate and Chris had their backs to me, surrounded by the cheerful noise of the celebration. Yet the space between us was unbearable. It had never been this bad. I could hear Chris's voice cutting through the air, a mocking tone, but I wasn't about to flinch. Not anymore. I had come here to make my stand. The same man who had been passive for so long now faced the man who had taken everything from him, and his daughter. Chris turned to me, a smirk spreading across his face. So you finally decided to show up. You gonna ruin the day with more of your moral high ground. I didn't let his words rattle me. You've done plenty of that yourself, Chris. Let's talk about your manipulation, your lies. You think this is about money? It's about control. You want my daughter to be yours, to be under your thumb. Well, I'm not gonna let that happen. His eyes narrowed. You don't get it, old man. I'm the one she needs, not you. You've been nothing but a burden. Maybe, I said, my voice calm despite the storm inside. But I've been a father, something you know nothing about. Chris's face darkened, and he stepped forward, his fists clenched, but I stood firm. I've taken all I can. I'm pulling my money, my support. You want this wedding? You'll have to do it without me. Let's see how long it lasts when the truth comes out. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. Kate's eyes shot to me, a mixture of hurt and disbelief written across her face. Chris didn't know how to respond. He tried to keep his cool, but there was no denying it. The power had shifted. I turned and walked away from them, feeling the weight of my decision settle in. The guests were whispering behind me, and I could feel their eyes on me. I didn't care anymore. I was done hiding. The reception area felt surreal as I walked out into the cool evening air. The conversation had left a bitter taste in my mouth, but there was a strange sense of closure. I had said what needed to be said. No matter how much it hurt, it was done. But just as I was about to leave, a voice stopped me. I turned to see Kate standing there, her face wet with tears, but there was something else, something I hadn't expected. I'm not going to pretend like I understand, Dad, she said, her voice shaky. But I get it now. You've done all this for me. You've been trying to protect me, even if it didn't feel like that. I wanted to say so many things, to reach out, to apologize, but the words wouldn't come. She took a step toward me, her voice quieter now. I can't forgive you for everything. Not yet. But I see it. I see what you've sacrificed, and I know it's because you love me. The tears in her eyes were painful, but in a strange way, they felt like a victory. Maybe not everything was lost. Maybe there was still hope. I nodded slowly, unable to speak, as she turned and walked back toward the hall, leaving me standing alone in the cold. The silence in the night was deafening, but I had done it. I had finally made my stand. Later that evening, I sat alone in my living room, the quiet echo of the wedding still in my ears. I replayed the day in my head, each word, each moment, and the weight of it all seemed to press down harder. The family I once knew was gone, and the bridge to what was left felt fragile. As I sat there in the quiet, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was my lawyer. Gilbert, I've got news. We've been digging into Chris's financials, and it looks like he's been hiding some assets from Kate. This gives us leverage, Gilbert. You've got more than you think. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, this was the twist I didn't expect. My heart pounded in my chest, the weight of it all finally lifting just a little. As I hung up the phone, I stared at it for a moment. The silence in the room felt different now. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun.